Jen.
Jen Lee. Okay,
Yes.
Do eble ni atendu kelkajn minutojn pli, ĉar homoj ankoraŭ venas.
Yes. Brandon, mi donis al vi the rajton de co-host por montri vian ekranon.
Dankon. Bone, do mi komencos dividi. Ĉu ni vidas la ekranon?
Yes.
Bone. Do ŝajne jam estas la dua, ĉu?
Yes.
Bone.
No.
Bone, do
Yeah.
do mi komencos, se homoj venos poste en ordo. We'll mostly give this presentation in English to keep it as accessible as possible to Esperantists in the US, not just who are watching it now, but who might watch it on YouTube. Hopefully, this can be a resource about how you can build up a digital Esperanto library. And when we say digital Esperanto library, we mean collecting ebooks in Esperanto and reading them. I'll start with two quotes from Kalamano Kalochai, who is a well-known and very influential Esperanto poet. He originally said, "Legu Esperantajn librojn, eĉ se vi ne aĉetas ilin." Read Esperanto books even if you don't purchase them. And then apparently later on he said, "Aĉetu Esperantajn librojn, eĉ se vi ne legas ilin." Purchase Esperanto books even if you don't read them. So there's a twofold goal in this presentation. It's to help people get comfortable collecting Esperanto ebooks, and those could be free ebooks that you get that you're interested in reading, or they could be ebooks that you purchase and maybe don't have time to read right away, but you're still supporting Esperanto publishers, which are a very niche group and can use a couple extra dollars. By way of introduction, I'll introduce myself, and then also Rachel, who's co-presenting this, will introduce herself. So I'm Brandon Sowers. I'm a member of Esperanto-USA. I am currently reading a lot of Esperanto ebooks, and I've learned a couple of tips and tricks in the last 9 months or so as I've dove into the world of Esperanto ebooks. I previously, for a long time, had been kind of intimidated. I hadn't known where to start. Which stores should I buy ebooks from? Which formats are the right ones? What kind of ebook reader should I use? I think about 10 years ago, I had tried to download a bunch of free PDFs and read them on a tablet, and that was okay. But I didn't really know which ones to start with, and a lot of them were kind of old works. And so one thing that I'll encourage folks to do is, it's great that there are some free ones. And so if you see something that's free that interests you, definitely get it. But also don't shy away from purchasing a couple. A lot of Esperanto ebooks are $7, $8. They're a lot cheaper than paper books. And that way you're also supporting Esperanto publishers, and you're getting something, hot off the press or that's been published relatively recently and might capture your attention more and encourage you to keep reading. Sorry, Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rachel Helps, and I work at an academic library as their Wikipedian in residence. So I'm very comfortable with searching for things online. And when, after I learned enough Esperanto to start reading books, I really wanted to read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So I tracked down a copy of it, but I could only find it in PDF. I tried to convert it to Mobi to work on my Kindle. I'm downloaded a dictionary, but it was kind of hard to find it and figure it all out. But I was determined, and getting through that whole book really helped my Esperanto fluency, and it's been nice to be able to read other books on it too.
Awesome. So as we go through, there's a lot of kind of text in this presentation, and that's not normally, I think, how either Rachel or I would do a presentation. It's kind of an information dump. We'll try to keep it very conversational. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and we can address those questions. Just use the raise hand function in Zoom. You can speak in English or Esperanto, and we'll try to solve them together. But the goal is also we will share this presentation afterwards, and hopefully it will be available on YouTube. So it'll be a consistent resource that people who are getting into Esperanto ebooks can use. So when we talk about Esperanto ebooks, we'll call them bitlibroj in this presentation, and we use that term instead of e-libroj. This seems to be the preferred term of a lot of publishers who publish Esperanto ebooks or bitlibroj. So bit in Esperanto just means digital. So bitlibroj is a digital book. So there's several advantages for bitlibroj in Esperanto. So one is that one of the problems that Esperanto publishing has traditionally had to face is the distribution problem, especially if a book is published in Europe. It might sit in some stocks in Europe for a number of years, and especially for Americans, we'd either have to get Esperanto-USA to order its own stock of that book so that we could get it distributed by Esperanto-USA, or we'd have to get it shipped from Europe, and so it would come slowly. It would cost a bit more for shipping, and you can't really. It's not the same as going to a brick and mortar bookstore where you can browse books in person, right? You have to kind of look on, a website or even further back in a paper catalog and see which books might be interesting. Maybe see if you can find a review of them somewhere. So it's a little bit harder to know where to start or which books to get when you can't see them in person. Bitlibroj can potentially solve all of these problems. So for one, a digital book doesn't take up inventory space anywhere. They're much easier to kind of browse at leisure. You can see them on websites and sometimes even download a preview of them. They can be delivered immediately with no shipping costs, no matter where you are. So I'm currently in a quite remote location where shipping would be difficult, and I'm able to get bitlibroj as soon as I would like. So there's a big advantage there. However, despite the advantages, there's also some kind of difficulties, or maybe we could think of them as barriers to entry that might intimidate some people away from bitlibroj. So, for a lot of people in the US, you might have a Kindle and read ebooks in English or Spanish or another national language. You just purchase the book. It's really easy. You don't have to think about a file format. You don't have to get it from some other source. It's, you get it directly on the Kindle or on Amazon on your computer. In some cases, you might send a PDF to your Kindle, but that's generally about as complicated as it gets for most people. In Esperanto, you're going to find ebooks in multiple formats from different stores, and you're going to have to kind of know what to do with those. And we'll show you how to manage that, but it can be a little intimidating if you don't know. So as I mentioned, there's also not really one single store for bitlibroj. So again, if you're reading ebooks in the US, you're probably getting them from Amazon, and you get them on your Kindle, and it's just easy. There's one store. Whereas for Esperantists, there's multiple publishers and vendors who sell bitlibroj. They each kind of have their own system. There are some bitlibroj on Amazon, but apparently Amazon doesn't support Esperanto as an official language. So those are kind of, they each have a different official language, and the quality can vary a lot, and it can be kind of hard to know where to start on Amazon. So we're going to show some of the other stores where you can get really high quality bitlibroj. And then kind of a last difficulty, and this is true both for bitlibroj and physical Esperanto libroj. You might not have a trusted guide or kind of a starting spot of which books should I start with. So often if we pick books in English or another national language, maybe we've heard someone else recommend them, or you might check reviews on Amazon, or get the algorithm might say, well, if you read this book, you're going to like this one too. You probably already have authors that you like. With Esperanto, it can be a little bit more difficult to know where to start, whether that's with original Esperanto literature or translated literature. So, maybe with original literature, maybe you've heard of some authors, but don't really know which ones to start with, right? You've heard of Sten Johansson, but he's got so many books, which one do I start with? Then for translated literature, Esperanto has a huge advantage that we've got a lot of really high quality, amazing translated literature, both classics as well as contemporary literature from all over the world. But that means it's probably from authors that that you might not have ever heard of. And so that can be also kind of both a blessing and a curse. How do I know which ones to start with, or what might interest me? And sometimes it can be even hard to know kind of what a book is about or to find reviews of it. You have to kind of go to multiple websites, so it's hard to know if you'll like it. We're going to show you, how to kind of find those reviews and find books that you might like, and we're going to give you recommendations on good books to start with. So after talking about bitlibroj, we'll show you how to read bitlibroj, how to organize them, get them, download them, and where to read them. So there's multiple ways you can read bitlibroj. In some cases, you can use things that you already have, like your computer, your phone, perhaps an iPad or tablet. And you just have to know how to set those up, get the right apps or the right tools onto them. We also strongly recommend, if you're interested, to get a dedicated ebook reader. So a lot of you might already have a Kindle. It's kind of by far the most common ebook reader in the US. If you don't have one, there's also another option called Kobo that's a good choice. Either way, that's going to be a really good investment, and we'll talk more about why. So if regardless of whatever else you're doing, you probably have a computer. There's a program you can download called Calibre, and it's kind of like what iTunes used to be for MP3s. You'd organize all your albums, all your music, keep it all organized, create playlists. Calibre is like that for ebooks. You can use it to store and organize all of your ebooks. So anytime you download one, you just drop it into Calibre, and it stays there. It's organized. It doesn't matter if it's a PDF or another format. You can organize the metadata, which can be extra important with Esperanto bitlibroj, because sometimes the quality of the metadata can vary widely. And when I say metadata, I mean maybe it's the author is misplaced with the title, and so when you try to load it onto your ebook reader, it's going to have the name of the author where the title should be, or something like that. So you can get that organized. Calibre makes it much easier to manage your bitlibroj. It's open source, it's free, it works really well. So we definitely recommend that you download and install it after the presentation and toy around with it.
Brandon,
Yes.
it's been a long time since I've used Calibre, and I can't remember, but will it allow you to edit the metadata so that you could move that author back to its rightful position in the metadata?
Absolutely, yes. You can edit it directly. You can also search for metadata, so you can basically click, find metadata, and it will go out and based on what it has, it will try to find additional metadata, and then you can choose whether that looks good, right? And sometimes I do that, and it brings back something weird, and I reject it. Other times I accept it, and it'll find the cover photo as well as the description, things like that. And then you can always edit it. Great. And then if you have Calibre, it can be really nice to use with your ebook reader. So just like you used to plug in your iPod and use iTunes to load your music onto it, Calibre can be used to easily load books onto an ebook reader. You can see which ones are on there. You can take them off when you want. So you might have 1,000 bitlibroj, some in Esperanto, some in other languages, on your computer, but maybe only want a smaller number on your ebook reader to kind of keep it easier to organize and pick the ones that you're most interested in at that time. Or maybe you're sharing a computer with someone and you have a ton of ebooks on there or bitlibroj on there, and you are each getting different books from Calibre, so that can keep it easy. You basically just plug in your device, highlight the books you want, and there's a button that will say send to device. So definitely, if you download Calibre and you get an ebook reader or you have one, try it out. I think you'll like it.
Brandon,
Yes.
are the books saved on your computer or are they saved on the Calibre website?
They're saved on your computer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so another way that I should mention Calibre has a reader as well, so you can read the books on your computer through Calibre. Another way you can read books is on your phone and tablet. So some of the stores that you might get where you might purchase bitlibroj will have apps that you can load onto your phone and tablet. So for example, two of the stores that we'll discuss are Google Play and Kobo. Those each have an app. So when you purchase books, you can read them directly on your phone or tablet there. In general, I don't recommend the phone as the main way that you read Esperanto bitlibroj. It can be useful, if you've got 5 minutes to spare, you can read a little bit and it will synchronize your position. So then when you go back to another device, you'll have the progress. But for reading anything long, it will strain your eyes. And especially I think this is true for PDFs because they don't resize, and we'll talk about that, but PDFs kind of always have the same page. So if you have a really small phone, everything's going to be very small. However, on the other hand, if you have an iPad or a tablet, this could actually be really nice to read PDFs because it's going to display on that much bigger screen. And then what we recommend is to get a dedicated ebook reader as your primary way to read Esperanto bitlibroj. They use a screen called e-ink, which basically just doesn't have the same kind of glare that a phone or a computer screen will have. It makes it much more comfortable for reading over time. A lot of them will also adjust the amount of blue light that they're sending in the evening, so you can read in bed without having the blue light activate parts of your brain that keep you up. They're comfortable to hold and travel with. I can walk around with 200 Esperanto bitlibroj in my pocket, so it's quite nice for that. If you don't have one yet, you'll want to budget about $100 or so to get one. There's different options at different price ranges, but budget about that. It's going to be worth it. You'll really enjoy it, I think. And then there's pretty much two good options here. So one would be a Kindle, especially if you already have one. That's a great option. Rachel will show you how to set it up to read bitlibroj on your Kindle. And then a second option is called Kobo. It's not as well known in the US, but I think it's a good option for bitlibroj because a lot of Esperanto books are already available in the Kobo store, so it makes it just easier to get up and running there. All right, so I'll pass it over to Rachel to talk about Kindles.
Okay, so I very much recommend that you download an Esperanto dictionary. The Wells one is available on the Kobo store or Smashwords, but there's also a freely available one through, it's just on GitHub, and it's nice because it has more of all of the forms of a word. So if it's, in the accusative, you can look it up and it'll still bring up the word, which is really helpful for a beginner, especially if it's a word that has a lot of, additions to it. It'll try to look up the root word. So that's in my collection of links that I put in the chat earlier. Setting up emailing to your Kindle is very, very convenient. There's a how-to guide online, and there's a link in these slides that you'll be able to click on when you see them later. But you could also just Google how to email ebooks to Kindle. And basically you just have to add your own email address to a whitelist. And then you can add your own Kindle to your address book in your email. And you can easily send, whatever ebook you downloaded that day directly to your Kindle. And it's so convenient. I love it. And I think we warned you about ebooks on Amazon before. So sometimes, I think I paid $2 for Carlo on there, which, it was an easy book to read and finish as a beginner, but it's in the public domain. I didn't need to pay $2 for it, but maybe it was worth it for the convenience. Otherwise, it's worth it to look at other websites where books are freely available or are they're actually from a reputable publisher. And the other thing I wanted to mention is Instapaper. It's a tool on the internet for saving long form articles that you want to read later. It also has a setting in the options to send it to your Kindle. So of course there's a little setup involved. You have to add their email address to your whitelist. But then afterwards it's really convenient if maybe you're looking at the Fatsila UEA page and you're like, okay, this would be great to read, but I'm checking Facebook right now. You just click the Instapaper thing and it'll send it to you later. Very convenient. I think that's it's almost everything I wanted to say about Kindles. So when you first, after you download the dictionaries, when you first look up a word, you'll just need to change the dictionary. And after that, it should use the same dictionary for the entire book. You should remember the last dictionary you looked it up in. Although a couple of years ago when I tested it in the Kindle app, you had to change the dictionary every time, which was a bit annoying because it looked at the metadata for the book to see what language it was in, to see what dictionary to use. So it'd be so nice if Amazon would recognize Esperanto as a real language, because then we wouldn't have to go through all those steps. So yes, that's everything.
Awesome. So another option for a dedicated ebook reader is a device called Kobo. So it's an ebook reader. They have multiple devices at different prices. They're based out of Canada. It's not really common in the US, but it seems to be fairly common in Canada and some other countries. However, they did recently partner with Walmart. So you can purchase one online, or you can just walk into any Walmart and you should be able to get one there. It seems to be the most common ebook reader that's oriented to the EPUB format, and we'll talk about formats a little bit later, but that's the main format that most Esperanto books are published in. And quite a few are even in Kobo's direct store, so you can purchase them directly from your device or online, and they'll download directly onto your device. If you do purchase books through them, they are free to do whatever you want with. They don't have what's called DRM, which prevents you from freely copying them. It's also fairly easy to load EPUBs or PDF books that you've purchased elsewhere onto Kobo. It's not quite as convenient as what Rachel described, of being able to email them to an address. You do have to physically connect your Kobo to your computer to do that, but it's not too bad, especially if you have Calibre. And then similar to Kindle, there's an app called Pocket that allows you to send long form articles to Kobo, so you can read them on the nice e-ink screen. It's quite convenient. And then another feature that I really like that's not really related to Esperanto is you can connect it to your library and check out digital books from your library. So I get a lot of books in mostly English that way. Okay, so we talked a little bit about file formats, and we said we'll help you learn everything you need to know about file formats. So there's three main formats to know about for ebooks or for bitlibroj. There's PDF, which you probably already are familiar with just in general. And then there's two formats called MOBI and EPUB. So with PDFs, the problem with them is that they don't resize. Each page is exactly, stays this, or it changes the size of the page, but it doesn't change how the text flows or anything like that. So each page looks exactly the same on any device, except it might just be really small if you have a small phone. So it can be a little bit difficult on a smaller device. Also, PDF files generally take up a bit more space. So on a dedicated e-reader, for example, if you had several hundred PDFs, that might take up all of your space. On the other hand, the other two formats, MOBI and EPUB, are very similar. So they both allow for resizing according to the device and user preferences. It means you can change the size of the font, you can put more space between the lines, you can change which font you're reading in to have the font that you like. So they're just a lot more flexible than PDFs and generally preferred. The difference between them is that MOBI is proprietary to Amazon and is only used on Kindle. And EPUB is an open source format and is widely used outside of Kindle. So if you use a Kindle, you probably need to convert EPUBs to the MOBI format before you send them. And you can use Calibre for that. And Rachel, I think that's something that you've used and it's fairly seamless, right?
Yes, it's really easy to change the format, and the book looks like you would expect it to. And so the two formats are pretty well interchangeable, I think.
Cool. Okay, so we talked about how to get set up to read bitlibroj. Now we're going to show you where you can actually go out and find some, and we'll give you some recommendations on some ones to start with as well. So there's a lot of, as we said, there's a couple of different stores that sell them, different Esperanto publishers. So we'll show each of them and how to find their bitlibroj. Probably the most well-known one is going to be Mondial. Their website is easily enough bitlibroj.com. So this is that takes you to the portal for Mondial's catalog of bitlibroj. They don't sell them directly from that site, but they each show where they can be purchased. And so pretty much all of their books can be purchased through Google Play Books. And then so about half of them can also be purchased through Smashwords or Kobo. And we'll look at those later. It's the same, they use the same feeds, they're just two different websites. And for those who don't know, Mondial is also the publisher of Beletra Almanaco, and all of those are available as bitlibroj. Another publisher that makes some of their books available in bitlibroj is Sezonoj, which is the publisher of the magazine Ondo de Esperanto. So several of their books are available as EPUBs and PDFs. Quite a few, I think, are free even. And they also publish, as I mentioned, Ondo de Esperanto, which you can subscribe to get as an EPUB and read on your device. Their catalog has a lot of interesting translations, many from English. As you see here, there's Nascito de la Rustimuna Stalrato, the Birth of the Stainless Steel Rat, and La Trashundo de la Baskerville, the Hounds of the Baskervilles. So both translations from English. Could be interesting to get those and read them alongside the English translation. And they also have good pamphlets about world literature in Esperanto, for example, about Dostoevsky in Esperanto, or J.R.R. Tolkien in Esperanto. So if you're like a progresanto, it might be interesting, as I mentioned, to get one of their English translations and read it alongside the original. Might let you read something more advanced than you might otherwise be ready for. Another publisher that has a very large number of bitlibroj is the Flandra Esperanto Ligo. The website is a little bit old, but if you know how to make it work, it's very easy to do once you kind of get through some of the old styling. So we show you here basically from the main page, there's a section where you can select bitlibroj, and then they'll show you all of their bitlibroj. They have about 64 books that they've published. Each of them is listed in 3 formats, which are PDF, Mobi, and EPUB. So you just pick the one that you need, and add it to your cart. A lot of them have reviews published over the years from Esperanto periodicals. So you can check, if you see here, there's several that have recenzo. So you can check for ones that have recenzo and kind of read some of the reviews to get a sense of the book, before you purchase it. That's a great way to know if it's something that might interest you. And then another publisher is Eldoneo Libera. They generally publish, it seems, 2 authors, Julian Modest, and Lode van de Velde. They do have books by a few other authors. They pretty much publish all of them in PDF as well as EPUB. They have links to the reviews. So their books tend to be crime novels. They have some poetry and some popular science and other interesting books. They even have a book on bliss symbols. For those of you who may have read Rika Okrent's book about In the Land of Invented Languages, she has a chapter on bliss symbols. You can get a deeper knowledge from Eldoneo Libera. They also don't sell them directly there. They sell them through a website called lulu.com, which we'll show in just a moment. And then another place where you can get Esperanto bitlibroj is called eLibrejo. As you can see, it's a very basic page. It pretty much just has links to files. These are all free. They were all produced by Franco Lewin between around 2000 and 2003. He seemed to be very ahead of the curve on purchasing Esperanto, or on producing Esperanto ebooks. A lot of them are older books, so they might be original or translations, but a lot of them first appeared in the 1930s or 1940s. There's a lot of stuff here. It can be easy to kind of get overwhelmed. If you download all of them, you might not know where to start. My recommendation here would be to pick a couple that look interesting to you, and have them start as part of your collection as you're building it up. But don't limit yourself to these just because they're free. It's great that they're free, but there's also a lot of really cool and interesting books coming out nowadays that are just a couple of dollars, and that way you're also supporting contemporary Esperanto publishers. So I definitely recommend mixing those. A couple of the websites where you can purchase books, that work behind the publishers, are Kobo and Smashwords. They have the same feed. The only difference basically is if you use a Kobo device, it'll be easier to do it through the Kobo store. It'll download the device directly onto your book. Otherwise, Smashwords is great. So a lot of the books published by Mondial are available here. There's also some other publishers who put books on here. For example, one very interesting one I found is La Granda Calderono, which is a classic of Esperanto literature about multiple generations in Scotland during the First and Second World War. It's $3. It's about 1,000 pages. It's quite a large book, but you know, it's a great bargain as well as an important part of Esperanto literary history. So yeah, just use this to get books from Mondial, but also search for Esperanto and see what else you find that looks interesting, and just keep a wish list to keep track of some ones for later. Google Play Books has the full catalog of Mondial, or at least of all of Mondial's bitlibrojn. So it's a great place to get those. They are generally only available as PDF. They have a few that are EPUB, but in all of those cases, they are DRM protected, meaning it's a little bit harder to copy them. So if you're trying to get them to another device, there's a few extra steps to take, and I'm not going to get into that here. You can learn how on the Google website. But you can also just use they have an app, Google Play Books. You can put it on your phone or on your tablet, iPad. You can read them on your computer. There's some really cool books here. So for example, they have the full collection of Beletra Almanaco. I don't recommend purchasing the entire collection at once. I would start with the latest issue and read it and see what's interesting. Beletra Almanaco is a great way to find reviews of other books as well, and find other interesting new books. They also have the concise encyclopedia of the original literature of Esperanto, which is in English, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's another great one. And then, as we mentioned, Lulu is the store where you can find the books from Eldoneo Libera. It's easy to buy them here. They're all, as you can see, priced fairly cheap. There are a few other bitlibroj in Esperanto on Lulu. On Lulu, you can filter by Esperanto and just see all of their Esperanto books. Some of the ones that are there are free, but I'm not sure of the quality. I haven't looked at all of those. And Lulu doesn't have its own app. You would have to download them and then use Calibre or some other way to get them onto other devices or read them on your computer. And then a last website that we want to show is not itself a store. You cannot get books from here, but it's a great way to find reviews. It collects a lot of reviews. As you can see, it's also in a little bit of an older format, but it's got a lot of great information. This is Originala Literaturo Esperanto, Ole, if you like. You can just search by a title of a book or by an author and find reviews. And it's also got links to some of the same websites that we showed. This is a great starting spot if you're looking for new books. Okay, so we'll each recommend a few books to start with.
Okay, so here are my recommendations. I really liked Inspiraj Rakontoj. There's a link to it in the presentation. It can be a little hard to find, but it's really nice for komencintoj. You know, after you do Duolingo and you're like, what can I read? All the stories are like only 1 or 2 pages long, so it gives you a sense of like, oh, I read this whole story. La Mirinda Sorcisto de Az. It's a well-known story, and there are some old-fashioned language or like weird fantasy words, but I was able to push through and read the whole thing. And I also recommend Vere au Fantasie. I read it in the in hard copy format, but after doing some research for this presentation, I was able to find it in electronic form, and it's a collection of progressively more difficult stories. Some of the last ones get a little bit silly, but that's helpful, I think, to keep your interest as you're building your reading endurance.
Great. So I also have a couple of recommendations. One of the first is La Vorto kaj la Vento. This is by Miguel Fernandez. He's a well-known Esperanto poet, but this collects, rather than his poetry, it collects some of his short stories that he's written in the last 20 years or so. The language can be a bit advanced, but the stories are not very long. So I definitely wouldn't recommend this, if you're very new to Esperanto. But if you are looking for something, that will get you a little bit more into the playful, poetic nature that Esperanto literature can have, this is a great starting spot. And because it's short stories, you're not going to get lost in a long novel or a long story. Another recommendation is Bonvenon. This is a graphic novel produced by Federico Gobo. He's an Italian Esperantist, sometimes called the Esperanto professor. He produced this graphic novel with an artist as for teenagers that he was teaching Esperanto to. It's really beautifully illustrated. The story seems cool, and so this would be a great option, to give yourself a graphic novel to read in Esperanto. It came out just a few years ago, so it's very contemporary. Another great one is the Esperanto English Dictionary. You can add it to your ebook reader, so you always have a dictionary on hand when you're reading. Sometimes the way I use it, for example, I do have to take a couple of steps to find the word in it. It's not as nice as if it was just built into my device. I think Rachel has a better way to do that on Kindle, but it's still very nice to have and be able to find any word that you need. And then finally, the Concise Encyclopedia of the Original Literature of Esperanto. If you really want to find some of the gems of Esperanto literature, this is a great starting point. It's in English, and you can look up any author who is writing, at least up until I think it came out in 2007. You can look up books, both original and translation, so you can get a lot of information about Esperanto literature. Probably also not a first book, but once you start to get your feet wet, this could be an interesting way to go forward. So that's it for what we have to show. At this point, we've got a few minutes for questions. Again, English or Esperanto is fine, and we'll do our best to answer. And open discussion is fine as well. Creed.
I wanted to point out that this weekend, I believe, is what Amazon is calling Prime Days, where they're putting a whole bunch of their stuff on sale, and I haven't checked, but normally all of their Kindles and Kindle Fire tablets go on sale during Prime Days. So if you are a Prime member, you probably already know about it. If you are not a Prime member, you might be able to score a cheap deal on it by finding somebody who is and asking them to buy one for you. I also wanted to ask you, we're talking about a digital library here, and digital libraries are not restricted to books, and I realized that this discussion was all books, but, I think a digital library would do well to include songs, podcasts, recordings of speeches, just things like that I actually have no idea how you would research those apart from looking for the books. But, anyway, I just wanted to push that out there.
Thanks. Okay, I see hands from Vilcho and Ivanyo, and then Jos.
Yes, we we prefer to read books in Esperanto that were created in Esperanto. Is there a convenient list or a convenient way to determine which ones are translations versus which ones were originally written in Esperanto?
Yes, I think pretty much any of those websites that we showed will make it very clear whether it's a translation or an original. Mondial, I think, is the main one that kind of does both. And basically, with Mondial, you just click. They have one for Originala Belletro and another for Traducita Belletro. I think they actually break it out into Originala Poesio, Traducita Poesio, Originala Noveloi kaj Traducita Noveloi, something like that. But for any of them, it should make it clear whether it's translated or original.
Thank you.
Ocho.
Ocho estas mi vico, perdona. Pri la legiloj, or perhaps I can do this in English. The readers you mentioned, there's there's one that some people may already have called the Nook from Barnes & Noble. They discontinued it for a while and they recently reintroduced it. It's around the same price as the Kindle. I don't think there's any real advantage to it, but for people who are averse to Amazon, that's one possible alternative. And one that I really like is the iPad, which I have here on Lowenstein's book on it. It's not cheap, obviously, but a lot of people already have them, and they may not realize that they function quite well as ebook readers. And there's also various apps on them. So, for example, if you like to buy from the Kindle store, or you like to buy from the Nook store or whatever, you can get an app for the iPad so that you can read your Amazon books or your Barnes & Noble books. And if you like to use if you like to break the DRMs so that you can read them in any reader, Calibre can also do that for you. We can't exactly reveal how because it's not a legal process, but if anyone's curious, I'm willing to explain the process.
Thanks. I wasn't aware that the Nook had been brought back, so that's interesting. I think a lot of the things I said about Kobo would also apply to the Nook. I think the Nook also uses the same formats. I
think they're all. It's made by Lenovo now. I think they're all Android devices.
Okay. And then I agree about the iPad and tried to highlight that can be useful. I see Chuck, Wally, and Murray.
Yeah, I have a question for Haas. Is the Usona Esperantisto available in the EPUB format?
It is not, but that is a project that's underway. I was hoping to have the EPUBs ready for this coming issue, but probably won't be able to. So sometime this year we'll have EPUBs.
Great, thanks.
You can also send them to your Kindle through the Instapaper tool that I mentioned. But yeah, if you're doing research or something, I guess it would be nice to have the whole thing in EPUB.
And of course, you can read the PDFs on many ebook devices already. So that's one way of getting it on your ebook.
Wally. Wally, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I have two questions for you, Brandon. One, I have a friend who is really into digitizing Esperanto books, and he was complaining that he couldn't find any one location where he could look and see which Esperanto books have already been digitized, and was wondering, is there a place where you can go and find, put in a title, and then it'll come up and show you whether that book has been digitized somewhere in the world or not?
I don't think there is. If there is, I'm not aware of it.
He was saying that was a grande manco, because why start trying to do a job and then suddenly you find out that it was done somewhere else?
I completely agree. I think this is one of the difficulties of I would say the economy of Esperanto publishing. It's very decentralized, which is nice in some ways, but it makes something like that more difficult.
Okay, the second question was with regard to El Popolo Chinillo and La China Movado. In the past, a lot of children's books were produced by El Popolo Chinillo or by publishing in China. Have they started to digitize some of those beautiful legends and stories that they published earlier for children? Because that would be a great service to any new families raising their children. So
I'll answer this because I've specifically looked for children's books online in Esperanto. And in my Legilaro that I put a link to earlier, I actually have like a Google Drive folder of all of the librojn I found, but I did not see any of the Chinese ones in there. I ordered a few from, I think, EUSA before it closed its LibreServo. And I agree, they're beautiful, although the Esperanto is a little more difficult than what I need to teach my children Esperanto.
Yes. Thank you.
Murray.
Yeah, with regard to Kindle and Amazon, I'd like to remind people about Amazon Smile. What they will do is give 0.5% of your purchase price through a fund to us if you sign up and want that money to go to us. Of course, that's not a lot that you would think, but when you take thousands or millions of dollars, that starts to add up. So I'd like you possibly to think of registering for that. When you open your account in the future, it will remind you that you do have a Amazon Smile account and suggest that you change if you want to that account. It doesn't force you to use Amazon Smile, but it's very courteous in letting you know about the thing that you've signed up for. Just a reminder.
Thanks. Ralph?
Yes. What does mean? What do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ni aŭdas vin. Mi pensas ke Brandono devas foriri, sed mi povas provi answer your questions.
I think mi pensas ke ni perdis Ralfon. Do eble li revenos. Dume, yes, mi devas foriri sufiĉe baldaŭ. Sed ĉu iu alia havas demandon aŭ komenton? Fred?
Yes, are you going to make your slide presentation available?
Yes, we will upload it into the Discord. And then also, I believe this whole presentation will be on YouTube.
Good.
If you have any links to add to the collection of links for Esperanto ebooks, I'm happy to add them to the page, and then maybe in the future someone can use it as fodder for an actual web page or something.
Right. Should we? It seems like there's.
It turns out I did have one more question I wrote down to remind myself. Does anybody have any kind of a rating system to rank the translations and say, well, this one is really good, or don't bother with this one, for instance, for the quality of the translation itself, not the book.
You would, I think you would need to find the reviews and just read the review and read what the reviewer says about the translation. Trio?
Salutojn. I'll say this in English. So I'm looking for volunteers to create a site that looks like Goodreads for Esperanto stuff. It would just be a list and people could say, this book was great, this book sucked, you know, whatever. Different people's opinions of the same book are very valuable. It's good for this, it's bad for that. So reviews would be really nice. Anybody who wants to help with that, contact me. Dankon.
Actually use Goodreads itself for Esperanto books. If they don't have the book, I add it. But if you do make it, let me know and maybe I can double post.
With that, it seems like there's no other comments or questions. I guess let's go ahead and close the session. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Great. Now it works again.
Well done, Duncan.
Yes.
Presentation.
I guess I'll just write stuff in Discord to supplement what's been said, since we're ending now. I have technical difficulties. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, just a minute then, because it's 1:48, so we're okay, right?
Yep.
First of all, I don't know about Chinese children's books, but in the chat, I put a link I discovered yesterday for a lot of Esperanto books from China that I could, adult books like Chinese philosophy and literature. That's in the chat. You'll find it somewhere in there. Secondly, an important thing about Esperanto translations is to find translations of things that don't exist in English, of which there are many things. And that's not just novels, but it can include short stories and other things. For example, there's a lot of science fiction translated from Russian into Esperanto. Some of it's in English, some of it's not. I think it can be found on Yuri Finkel's website, but you get the idea. Also, I didn't even know about Rachel's list up until this session. So I will exploit that. And I think that in lieu of a master list where everything's in one website, just having a master list of places you can go for free books and books to buy, that is a good start, because then you'll know. I used to keep a list, but it's years out of date, and I go to one place or another place, but I actually never kept my own master list up of where to go looking for books. Which is why I always have to hunt for stuff over and over. So just having a master list of repositories of Esperanto books, like Rachel has compiled, which I have to look over, is very useful. Let me see what else there is. Just one question, if I may, and then I'm done. About the Esperanto-USA book service. Last time I looked, I noticed that they don't send books themselves as a rule anymore. You order them indirectly, and they're sent from Europe, or from someplace, or through Amazon, or through something. I forget Amazon. Does your book service that used to exist in the Bay Area, does that actually still send out physical books of any kind?
Esperanto-USA does still have a book service. We still have books, and we send stuff out. Esperanto-USA works also through Amazon and through the other book services like in Europe for several reasons. One is that many people look first to Amazon to search for books. And when we only had books available from our bookstore and did not list them on Amazon, many people thought that those books did not exist. A reason that we reference books directly as orders from Europe is that saves tremendously on freight costs. We do still have some books in the bookstore, in the physical bookstore, no longer in California, it's now in Maine. But if you want to ask about those, Bill Harris, the director, will be glad to answer your questions, and we'll be glad to help you any way we can. The bookstore still exists, and it still ships books, but it might be via a direct shipment or via Amazon or directly from the publisher. It depends, there's various reasons for all of that to happen, and we try to give you the best of all worlds by making that diversity of ways to order. Thank you very much, Brandon. There are, and Rachel, there are books available for download in the Reputico of Esperanto-USA. Some of those are links to other sources. Like if you look to download the books of Claude Perron, that will take you to the Claude Perron website where you can download them, and some of them are available in both EPUB and PDF formats, things like that. There's also Project Gutenberg and other, and there's just, it's a world out there. One comment I have is I think it's great that it's difficult to have a master list of anything to keep updated, because the Esperanto worldwide movement is so diverse, it's hard to keep a handle on it. If it were smaller, it'd be easy to have a master list, but I appreciate all the efforts to have a master list, and that's a good thing to try to have one. But to keep it updated and complete, totally complete, is going to be an impossible project. And that's a good thing because it's such a big, vast world out there of Esperanto literature. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah,
What a-
thank you both. And
what
not
a-
to pick on the Edists or anything, but I'll bet you a similar project for Edo would be much, much easier to accomplish.
Want to ask a quick question. Where will we look for this presentation on Discord?
We're going to we're going to have the presentations that we film in the Esperanto-USA channel of YouTube, and we will post updates to that. I'm putting them first in the Generala channel of Discord, and if I find a better place, I'll reference that from that place, and we'll let you know. You'll be able to find it.
Oh, so
Also,
we're not going to post the PowerPoint or whatever it was?
Oh, the PowerPoint.
Roberto will, wait, did I remember his name right? He'll post it to Discord, and Brandon will, sorry.
Where in Discord? Where in
So
Discord?
probably in the general channel, Generala, or there's actually a brand new channel for reading and librojn.
Oh, right.
So-
Yes, there is a Librojn Kai Legado. There's a
We
new
made it
channel.
last night.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. And we have a 1 hour pause until the next session, actually, which will also be about books, specific books that Wally will bring to us. Will talk to us about. And we'll see you then or whenever you wish to participate. Thank you all. Ci sposte.
You're supposed to.
Phil, just a quick question for you. Phil, did you mention there was a physical bookshop with Esperanto books in Maine?
Well,
Where is that?
No.
It's not a physical bookstore that you go in. The book service was relocated from California to Maine. It's actually in a room in the home of Bill Harris, our director.
Okay.
Because we have a lot fewer books in stock now. And because the world's going to ebooks and Amazon, we ship some to Amazon. Amazon charges us some for stocking books, and there's a fee for that, but it's searchable, and there's a whole bunch of reasons. And there were heavy intense board discussions in the board of directors on how we're going to manage all that and what would be most effective for our members. But it's not a walk-in bookstore. Jeez.